and welcome to the Ladybug Laboratory podcast. I am your host, Lily, and this is a show all about various fiber crafts. So today we've got some knitting and some crocheting. The topic today is using scraps of yarn. So first I'm going to talk about how I go about picking scraps to use for projects and how I go about picking projects to use for scraps. And then I'm going to show you some projects that I have. There is one project that I don't have with me, and the reason for that is I am at the Black Squirrel Berkeley, which is my local yarn shop, and I am recording in front of their marvelous yarn wall, and if I remember, I will insert a picture here. And this is only part of their yarn. This is their independent dyers, hand-dyed wool blends mostly. Wall. So, without further ado, I'm going to talk to you about scrap. Well, first off, I need to talk about a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'll talk about scraps. So here we go. So for housekeeping, a couple of things I wanted to clarify about this podcast. Number one, I am not willing to effectively do tutorials on the show. A lot of people have asked me in terms of topic suggestions to show them how I pick up stitches for the gussets in my socks, or what I do specifically for X, Y, and Z, or to teach them about blah. And I really want to respect people who work in this community as teachers, and they make their living doing that, and I'm not willing to just throw that out there on the internet for free. And that doesn't mean I resent those of you that do, but I want to make it clear that that's not what this is about. I do feel even a little bit uncomfortable with my last episode, which was about socks. But that one I felt like was more informational about the construction of socks, what a sock is, and it wasn't as much instructive. So with that said, informational topics are things that I will do, and instructive topics, not so much. I'm sorry if that makes anybody uncomfortable. It's just I'm not comfortable with doing that on this show. A couple of other things. I am not going to be showing every project every time. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. The way that this works is I pick a topic and I show you projects that have to do with that topic. Today I am drinking tea. I'm drinking cranberry blood orange black tea from the Republic of Tea. And I am drinking it in this fantastic knitted mug. Obviously it's not really knitted, but it has the texture. It is very, very hot right now, so I'm not going to be drinking any just yet. And my show notes are over here, so if I glance over here, that's why. I think that's all that I have for housekeeping today. Later on in this episode, I'm going to be talking about a pattern that I will be releasing, and that's all I have to say. This is going to be part one of an episode on scraps. The other part will probably come in mid-October. All right, let's get started. So how I plan projects for scraps is, first of all, in order to do this, you have to know the types of projects that work best with scraps. So color work works really well because you can have, for instance, you can get, let's say you're making socks. You can get one sort of background color, maybe even a 50-gram ball because you won't use as much of it. And then you can use scraps for all the color work or for contrast heels and toes, stuff like that. The other types of projects that are really good for scraps are smaller projects, so socks, mitts, hats, and stuffies, softies, anything like that. The other thing that I do for making scraps, making projects out of scraps, is I sort of start by sorting all of my scraps. So for instance, after I finish a pair of socks, I will take all of the leftover yarn from that pair of socks, I will put it in, sorry, there's a group of kids going by. I don't know if you can hear that. I will put it in my bins, which are for my scrap blanket. So I have one bin that's more solid colors and one bin okay. So for my scraps, I have one bin that's more solid colors and one that's more variegated. Tonals kind of go with solids, more variegateds go with the self-striping, and more sort of crazy colors. And so when I'm planning my scrap blanket, I'll take those and move them around. And I'm actually not talking about my scrap blanket today. I know it seems like the obvious choice for an episode on scraps. That's going to be in part 2. So anyway, I'll talk about that more a little bit later. So after I've put it in my blanket, I rewind it and put it on the wall, and I put them in my yarn wall organized by color and type, so that if I'm looking for contrast heels or toes for a pair of socks, I can look in all of my sock yarn. If I'm looking for color work yarns, I can look in my plain single colored yarn section, right? So in part 2, I'll give you a tour of how I organize my scraps. And this, by the way, is what I mean by sort of informational or tools for how to best use your knitting and what you need to know about your knitting, as opposed to instruction. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of projects that I have done with scraps recently, and then I'm going to talk about a few that I have planned. For those of you that don't know, the reason this podcast is broken up so choppily into segments is because my camera, I use my phone, and it will only record a certain amount at a time. So yeah, first off, I'm going to show you some finished objects, some projects I'm working on, and then some planned projects. So here we go. So if you followed me on Instagram, you've probably seen most of these projects. Actually, I think you've probably seen all of them. And if you're interested in seeing my projects as I work on them, Instagram is a good place to look. The information is in the down bar. But the first pair of finished objects that I have, and notice that I said pair, you can probably already guess, you probably just saw it. These are my Argyle mitts. So here they are. This pattern is from the Perth Festival of Yarn companion pattern from book from 2017. While I'm recording, today is September 9th, by the way, it is a Sunday. Perth Festival of Yarn 2018 is currently happening, so I hope it's going well. Everybody that's there, I'm so jealous. But yeah, these are, oops, I just dropped one. These are my mitts. Now, I used scrap yarn for these. This brown is left over from a pair of knee-high socks that I made for myself. And I cannot remember for the life of my Stern Taller socks that I made last year. And this blue is the background color that was in my grandmother's sweater that I made, I think, 2 years ago. And so they were both scraps. In the original pattern, it called for switching the thumbs, so having the thumb in one be brown and in the other be blue, and that was so that you could use Jamison's wool and get and just use 2 25-gram balls and make sure that you had enough room. But since I had, or enough yardage, since I had scraps and I knew I had enough brown, I decided to make them identical instead of fraternal twins. Yeah, so I was inspired to make these. I've had the pattern book for a while, and I was inspired to make these by Rachel of the Crafty Historian podcast. If you have not watched her, you need to go watch her, because she's one of my favorite podcasts, honestly. And I love everything she makes. So she made a pair of these, and I had been thinking about making a pair of fingerless gloves, and so I saw them and I loved the pattern, and so here they are. These are by, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'll put it in the down bar. Somebody, I'll put it in the down bar. Yeah, I really like them. I really, really like them. I obviously haven't worn them yet because it's September, and around here it's just been summer, which is why I'm working on small projects, because they're easier to do in the summer, but because they don't sit on my lap. But they're also not super wearable, so I will probably start wearing these sometime in November. Yeah, but I'm really excited for them. I used, for the first time in my life, a size 0 needle. Actually, that's not true. I had used a size 0 once before and it was a disaster. Traditionally I've been a very tight knitter, but recently I've definitely loosened up my gauge, so I've had to go down needle sizes for things that I had a standard needle size for. So for socks, I've always done US 2s or 1.5s, and I will put the millimeters for that down here. But now I'm having to do US 1s or 1.5s and millimeters down here. So for these ones, I actually used a 0. I used a 0 for the color work. Yeah, so I guess that's all. I am very excited for these. All right, so that was my first scrap project, and I knew I wanted to make them. I pulled out a whole bunch of scraps of fingering weight yarn and put them together on the ground and sort of moved them around, came up with a bunch of options, and that was my favorite one. So the next scrap project that I have is Nora. Nora is a gnome, and this is from the Here We Gnome Again pattern by Imagine Landscapes. The Charm of It, Eva of The Charm of It, and Imagine Landscapes co-hosted a knit along for this. You should also watch The Charm of It because she is fantastic. She goes into a lot of detail of how she modifies patterns. She makes a lot of sweaters herself, and it's really awesome. So this is using worsted weight yarn. The blue is from the Podcaster Festive Sock Swap that I did, 2 or 3 Christmases ago. I don't remember. It was organized by Eva Christie of the Diary of a Yarn Festival Director podcast. And this white was the contrast color in my Boston Bound shawl, which I talked about a couple episodes ago. And you can see that it is definitely less pink than it is in the shawl because of that whole disaster thing. I did not stuff Nora. This is Nora with a G, by the way. G-N-O-R-A. Because gnome, Nora, yeah. So I did not stuff Nora as much as I should have. So she has a bit of an hourglass waist. And instead of using polyfill beads, I just used rice in a, actually I don't think I put them in a stocking. I just put them in. So this is not child friendly because it has rice that may or may not come out at some point. So it just sits on the top of the shelf in my craft room. And I made a pom-pom. This is the first pom-pom I've ever made. I used a little pom-pom maker from Clover. Yeah. And I did a slightly bigger pom-pom than the pattern called for because it was the smallest one that came in the set. So I really like her. She's adorable. This is a fantastic pattern, by the way, if you are interested in that. Unfortunately, the knit along is over, but this is a great scrap pattern. They do have a fingering weight and a worsted weight version. I'm probably going to be making more of these because A, they're adorable, B, they're perfect for scraps, C, I have a lot of scraps. So, yeah, that's Nora. All right. The third finished object that I want to show you is my hippopotamus. So this is a pattern that if you've never seen it before, it's an adorable pattern. This is the Happy Potamus pattern by Heidi somebody, down bar. And I had a little set of mini skeins from Canon Hand Dyed Yarns that I got at Stitches West last year. And I'll put in a picture of them here. And I had no idea what to do with them. They just called out to me, and they were too small to really put in my blanket. And so originally I was like, oh, I'll just do 2 per square. And then it occurred to me, this basically just uses scraps. So this is a great project for scraps, but also this white is Miss Bab's Yummy 2-ply in the Naked, which means it's not dyed. And this I actually used as part of the color work in my grandmother's sweater a couple years ago. And the yarn in here is also 2-ply, so I thought that was perfect. That's the other thing that I often try and do, I don't always do it, is match the fiber type or spin type, the yarn texture of the yarns that I use in a project. Yeah, I did not do that in the gloves because one of those is 2-ply and the other is not, but it's fine. So this is adorable. I am in love with this hippopotamus. It's so cute. So I added safety eyes, and the pattern has a really cool eye construction to sort of bring the eyes in, but I did not use their eye construction because I had to attach the safety eyes before I finished the hippopotamus, and theirs required it to be afterward. So I went back and I pretended I was attaching more eyes at the end to sort of pull the eyeballs in, make it more realistic. Yeah, I love this. I'm so happy with it. Look at the little hippopotamus butt. I highly recommend this pattern. It's a very fun pattern, especially if you know how to crochet. I did use child-safe polyfill in this, so this could eventually go to a small child. If so, it will probably be a child in my family because I want to keep seeing this. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about this. It was so much fun. It's a fairly involved project. You have to do it. I would recommend doing it at a point in your life when you want to have something to do with your brain, maybe when you get home at night or whatever, because it requires a lot of, well, for me, since I did it in so many colors, I really organized the colors and made sure everything was perfectly matched and blah, 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 and not too much of this color or that color, because that's how I roll. I'm a little bit obsessive when it comes to these things. If that's not how you roll, this is going to be a great project for you. Now, when it comes to actually putting it together, it does require you to have some time on your hands because you sort of stuff as you go and you sort of have to, yeah. But I really love it. The construction is really creative, really well done. Heidi Bears, that's what it is. She has a lot of other animals, and I have another set of minis from Cannon Hand Dyed in a slightly different colorway that I'm thinking I might make the owl out of. So we will see. But yeah, I'm really happy with my hippopotamus. All right, so those are 3 of my 4 finished objects. And the 4th one brings me into discussion of a pattern that I am making. So through the Black Squirrel Berkeley, which is where I am, and through Dawn Catherine Studios, maybe? Not 100% sure. Dawn Catherine something. She makes project bags and other printed various things. But they are doing a yarn bomb. And here in Berkeley, there are a lot, in Oakland, there's a lot of homelessness in the Bay Area because of housing prices, and it's complicated and political, and I don't really want to get into it. But we wanted to make a statement with our yarn. To create is to resist, you know, and resist the consumerist culture, resists, create your own thing, continue thinking critically and creating. Creating is just so important. So we're doing a yarn bomb where we are going to a fence behind one of the biggest homeless encampments in the area, and we are putting houses on the fence. So this is, and I wanted to practice pattern writing, so I'm actually writing up this pattern. Do I expect anybody to make a house? Probably not. Will the pattern be up in time for you to make them and send them to me for the yarn bomb? No. The yarn bomb is in a week. 6 days, actually. But I just wanted to practice it. If there is anybody that wants to make these or wants to test the pattern or wants to do their own yarn bomb in their own city, by all means, please let me know. This is going to be a free pattern because it's a practice for me. I'm going to be practicing writing it up, publishing it, and after that, I'm seriously thinking of starting to design patterns, for sale, which is a really terrifying but also really exciting prospect. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. If you have any feedback or thoughts, please let me know. So this has 3 different colors, obviously. The background color, this cream for the windows, and the brown for the door. I'll show you the back. So you can see that each of these only has 2 ends, one here and one here, right? And the blue only has 2 ends, at the start of it and at the end of it. So this is sort of like a crochet intarsia hacked version. Yeah, I'm going to be writing up this pattern. The final pattern is going to be a little bit different. The door is going to be a tiny bit taller. The space on the sides is going to be a tiny bit thinner, and I'm going to redo the roof because the edges of the roof are not stretchy enough to really make the roof look the way it's supposed to. So I'm actually going to kind of hack the stitches and have a completely different construction. But in this pattern, I also have I have directions for how to do that sort of mock intarsia, as well as directions on how to do a standing double crochet and a foundation single crochet, both of which are fantastic stitches to have in your toolbox if you are a long-term crocheter. They replace the sort of cast-on chain for foundation single crochet and the chain 3 at the beginning of each row for standing double crochet. So yeah, I'm also going to put a modified standing double crochet in here during the roof. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. And that brings me to works in progress with scraps. I only have the one, and that is another house. And this one I'm making as I write up the pattern. So I'm writing a couple of lines on the pattern based on my old one, and then crocheting as the pattern says, and then adapting as needed. This is not really accurate house colors. It's, yeah, I'll just show it to you. So, the door is pink, which is fine. The background is yellow, which is also fine. It has a light pink window. Whatever. It's not super accurate, but it is what it is. I didn't want to do another cream window. It blended in too much with the yellow. And I am using scraps for this. So mostly Red Heart Super Saver. It includes a lot of scraps of yarn that I've gotten from various family members that have died or family members of family members that have died. Some of these scraps are from my aunt's grandfather, who, if you're a long-term viewer, you will have heard about Auntie Dee's blanket. This is some extra scraps of that. So yeah, because of that, I'm just using what I have. And yeah, I actually think it looks nice, even though no one has a pink window. So I am using, this is Red Heart Super Saver in the cornmeal colorway. This is also Red Heart Super Saver in the petal pink. And I have absolutely no idea what this one is. Probably Red Heart Super Saver, don't know the colorway. But yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say about that. I have finished the door and the window, and I've just finished building the second story. So the very next row, I'm going to start the next 2 windows. Yeah, I'm hoping to finish the sort of test crochet maybe in the next 2 or 3 days, and then finalize the pattern. I'm typing it up as I go, but you know, formatting and stuff like that, and I really want to make it pretty, and there's a lot of tips and tricks that I sort of am including in the pattern, so I'm thinking of putting them in the sides and sort of drawing arrows like speech bubbles or something. Let me know if you have any thoughts on that. Not 100% sure when this podcast will go live, but I'm hoping to release the pattern on the same day as the yarn bomb. It might have to be a little bit after that, but I think on the same day would be a really neat touch. Do you have anything else to say about that? I don't think so. Yeah, so if you do want to test crochet that, let me know. You're by all means welcome to make your own version of this yarn bomb. The pattern is going to be called But Not Both. And that is from kind of my mantra in terms of housing in the Bay Area, which is housing can be a right or an investment, but not both. So the pattern is going to be called But Not Both. And I understand that that is going to make it not search engine optimized. It's going to be terrible in Ravelry because it's supposed to be house, right? I'll probably put it in the tags or something, but yeah. So here it is. I don't have anything else to say about that except that it is living in an African market basket bag that I got here at the shop, which I love and I use for sort of bigger projects that kind of sit next to the couch at home. So yeah. I don't have any more projects to show you except for some planned projects. So I'm going to take a break here and start a new segment because this one's already getting a little bit long. Okay, so there's a couple of projects that I have planned using scrap yarn or just random yarns from my stash that I'm sort of throwing together. So first I'm going to talk about one that, you know, when you impulse buy yarn, you buy enough for a shawl or for socks or something like that, and you don't really know what to do with it. So I found a pattern that I think is going to be great and combine 3 different sets of yarn that I have. So I have 2 of this. This is Madelinetosh sock in the Joshua Tree colorway. This beautiful, rich forest green. That's pretty accurate. I have 2 of this, which is Earl Grey Fabric Company Darjeeling sock in the Leaves of Grass, and this is their old Darjeeling base. And I have 3 of this, which is Sugarbush Drizzle, which is like a mohair. It's kind of a mossy color. I don't know what the actual colorway name is. Does it say? I don't think moss. So I guess it kind of makes sense that those all go together. Tree, leaves, moss. So the pattern that I'm planning to do these with is called Ever Again. It is by Boo Knits, and it calls for 2 different yarns that sort of contrast / coordinate with each other, like these. And the 2 yarns are 1 fingering weight and 1 sport weight, like mohair silk blend. So what I'm gonna do is make one of these the fingering weight, and then for the other one, for the sport weight one, I'm gonna hold double this mohair and one of the fingering weight. So I can't decide if I want to hold these together or these together. I think I'm gonna hold Leaves of Grass together with the moss. You can't really see it very well on the camera, but the tonality of these 2 are really almost like, it's very clear that it's the same color, but just with more saturation. This one is a slightly different color, but it's lighter and it might blend better with the mohair. So I'm gonna play around with those and see what I got with that. Now, I have 2 skeins of Leaves of Grass. I didn't bring the second one with me to the shop. But the second one is a little bit different. It might be a different dye lot, I'm not sure. And so I think, if you look at the pattern, it sort of has a border on the bottom, and I think for the border, I'll use 1, and then I'll use the other for the inside. I haven't decided which one's gonna be which, but yeah, so that is one plan that I have for just pulling things from my stash. Again, the same idea of keeping things sort of organized and all visible. The other big thing about using up stash and scraps is making things visible. So in part 2 of my segment on scraps and stash, I'm going to give you guys a sort of tour of how I organize my stash. And a lot of these are planned scrap projects, so you'll see them either in progress or finished. So that's the first one. Second one is going to be in my Studio in the Green sort of deer sock bag. And this is going to be, I'm going to be working on, oh gosh, what's it called? Lepus Love, I think. And it is a pattern by Kyla of the Arctos Knits podcast, another great show. And it's a colorwork pair of socks that have like little bunnies across the top. So I have not decided which yarns I'm going to use for these. I'm open to suggestions if anybody wants to suggest. So one option is this brown and white. So the white would be the cuff and then the bunny motif, and then the brown would be the bulk of the sock. These are both scraps. These are from the diamond socks I made my brother, and these are from a pair of ankle socks I made years ago. The other option is using these two, and this one would be the bunny and this one would be the background. This one is a Knit Picks yarn. I don't remember what it's called. It's kettle dyed. I'll put it in the bottom. It's out of stock. They don't make it anymore. And this one is Knit Picks Stroll in the cork colorway. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning toward this one because I think the white is just a little bit too bright. I thought about this, but the contrast just isn't good enough. I'm going to take a break here. Sorry about that. I had to take care of something. So the problem with these two is that this one you can't really see it, but it's definitely white. It's not cream, and it's a little bit too bright, I think, to go with this brown. Now that I'm thinking about it, I might dye the white with tea. Maybe I'll do a sample, see how that looks. I don't know. We'll see. If you have any suggestions, let me know. But I'm doing a test knit for that pattern. I'm just going to kind of let that yarn sit over there because I'm not going to talk about it anymore. That will eventually be living in this bag. So then I have living in an old school Earl Grey Fiber Company bag with the cork bottom. Or will be living in that. Two separate projects. So one of them, I'm going to be doing the hedge nettle, maybe, mitts, which were also designed by Kyla. And they call for an Aran weight yarn. I'm going to be using one of these two scraps. I can't decide which one. And these are both alpaca worsted weight from a project from years ago that I briefly touched on a long time. It was a disaster felted bag. I ended up having to throw the whole thing out. It was like $240 worth of yarn. So these are definitely more of a DK. They're listed as worsted, but they're definitely more of a DK. And so I'm going to hold them double to make it an Aran weight. So I'm either going to do this purple. You can't see these very well. Or this green. One of those two. So these are from a bag where I keep all of my sort of woolly, like 100% wool. These actually I think have some alpaca in them. I don't even remember. I know they're in my Ravelry stash. I will eventually roll these up and put them on my stash wall, but right now they're still in that bag. Yeah, or skein them up, excuse me. So those are going to be in here. And then the other thing that I have planned is the Peaky Cat Socks by somebody. I'll put it in the down bar. And I'm going to be using these two, which are also scraps from that same project. Now these are not great sock yarns. That's a DK weight sock. These are not great sock yarns. It requires two contrast colors. These are the two contrast colors I'm going to use. And while I'm here, I'm actually going to see if I can find a DK weight yarn that's better for sock yarn that I could use as the main color. Um, I'm a little bit worried about it because this one especially is not a hard wearing yarn, and the contrast colors end up on the toes. This one's a little bit more hard wearing. This will be better, but yeah, we will see how it goes. But I think I have enough of this that if I need to, I could darn it, and I don't mind darning. I don't know. So that will probably also end up living in this unless I do them at the same time, in which case it will go in some other bag. Yeah. So all of those I will show you again during part 2 of my scrap session. Part 2 of scraps will also include a tour of my stash and how I organize it. And I'll look at my scrap blanket and any other scrap projects that I've started. The reason I did not bring my scrap blanket today is because I'm at the shop and there's only so many things I can bring to the shop. So I think that's all I have to talk about today. You may or may not see part 2 of the scraps next. There's a possibility that I will be recording in late September, and I will be away. If I have a chance to record, all right, I'll just tell you, my cousin is dying of terminal brain cancer, and we're having trouble with the insurance getting, oh my God, that car, back up, car. Okay, that was terrifying. So there's a train station. I'll talk about this when the train goes by. Okay, so there's a train station right there. The train tracks go right by, and I can see through the windows out to the train tracks. This entire wall is windows, by the way. It's just flat windows, floor to ceiling. And so the train's going by, and the horn sounds, the sort of dividers go down to stop the cars from going down the street. And there's this car that is on the tracks when the horn sounds. And instead of just going across the tracks where there's not a divider on that side because you could just go across, they decided to back up. So they backed up, and I could see them backing up, and they were not backing up fast enough to get out of the way of the train. So they backed up, and I could see the divider coming down, and I was like, oh my God, the divider is gonna come down behind them, and they're like, there's enough room, but it's still like terrifying. So the divider came down on top of the car. Oh my God. So then they just kept backing up until it finally came down and like slid off the roof of the car onto the hood. Oh my God. I don't know why they didn't just finish going across the tracks. When I was a kid, my mom had this phrase, which was, it's like a train crash, you can't stop looking. And it was anytime something bad was happening, usually people were making a fool of themselves, and you just could not, it was so terrible, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and like you almost wanted to laugh, it was so bad, but you couldn't stop watching. My mom used to say, it's like a train crash, you can't stop watching. And I suddenly understand that phrase. Oh my God. Okay, anyway, my cousin is dying. Yeah, shifting gears, right? 2018 has not been a great year for me. We're on like version 7 of terrible things that have happened in my life. And my cousin is dying of brain cancer. He has less than 2 months. We found out about a week ago. Insurance is working on getting him a hospice nurse, but he probably won't have one for another month or so. And so family members are taking turns flying out and staying with him for a week and just kind of watching him because he can't remember how to walk sometimes. He can't remember where the bathroom is. He definitely can't cook. And he needs to have his meds regulated. And yeah. So my shift is near the end of September. It's actually like right before my birthday. So But what you gonna do? What you gonna do, right? Family comes first. And yeah, it is what it is. I gotta be there. So I don't know how often he's gonna be conscious. I don't know if I'm gonna be running around like a crazy person or if I'll just be sort of sitting there watching him sleep on the couch, knitting. And his son is also in the area, and his son has like a 6-year-old daughter, so I might spend some time taking care of her to give his son a break. Yeah, so I'm not really sure what that will look like. If there's a lot of time when I'm just sort of sitting there, then I'll try and record while I'm there, and I'll just talk about whatever I have with me. It'll be good to sort of get my mind off of things. But if not, then I'm not going to record again until October. And at this rate, I've been recording about once a month, so whatever. It's the start of the school year, so everything is nuts, and I didn't get a recording in for quite a while. But honestly, I don't care, because I really love podcasting. I really love participating in the community. But at a certain point, the number of things that have happened this year that were serious life events in a bad way. This is going to sound so callous, but if people stop watching because I don't podcast for 6 weeks, I really don't care. I really don't. Life comes first. I have to take care of myself. And when I still have nightmares about some of the things that happened 9 months ago, I got to take care of myself. So if podcasting is something that will get my mind off of everything that's going on with my cousin, then I will podcast while I'm there. If not, I'll see you guys when I see you. I hope you understand. Yeah, so I don't have anything else to say today. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see these projects as they are created. Otherwise, you'll see them when you see them. And have a fantastic day, everybody. I hope you get to relax and eat delicious food and laugh and smile and have fun with people that love you and just rest and rejuvenate and enjoy whatever crafting you do. And I'll see you later. Bye.